What up, and welcome back to another Malazan Book of the Fallen video. This week we're covering chapter 6. I had to go back to one chapter at a time because they're so meaty, so much stuff going on. So let's get it. Okay, so we're going to start with the chapter breakdown this week for 6, and then I'll try and put out chapter 7 midweek so we don't have to wait a whole week and do one chapter per week. And then next weekend, I think I'm going to do 8 again as a standalone video just because it's so beefy. And then hopefully I'll combine 9 and 10 the following week, so we'll get into that second half of the book the following week. As always, we'll do the breakdown first and then the spoilery stuff second. So yeah, let's just get into it. We kick off at Skull Cup and we see Benneth and Felison are their usual chipper selves. They're having a little lover's spat, basically. And it seems like something's going on from that meeting with Salwark, right? Where he seemed to know who Felison was. That's what caused Benneth to beat her. He's kind of like kicked her to the curb a little bit. She's trying to like be back in his good graces. And there's this kind of weird emotional like hostage dynamic going on. Bennett's got his posse out and he's gonna like pass her around, and she is just going through like the worst of the worst. This is like all coinciding with the kind of dosy traders who supply all of Skull Cup and the Odotarl kind of slave camp just flip out and rebel, essentially, and they start taking down Benneth and his crew, and Felison has to like basically run for her life to get away from that. And ultimately it comes down to a bunch of the Empire soldiers who end up saving her with Pella at the head of the pack. So he scoops her up and basically takes her back to Heboric, and they basically affect this rescue plan, which apparently has been like in the making for some time. In fact, when we thought Pella was like trying to holler at Felison, what he's actually trying to do was to get her a message to Heboric, basically, in terms of orchestrating this whole big escape plan. That's why Heboric was asking about the tides and the seasons and finding out when the lake was going to be just right. And so they end up hooking back up with Bowden. And they're going to essentially float across the lake on these like inflated bladders, and then they're going to like dive down into these caves and come out into the desert, and then eventually make their way across that desert to the lifeline that is going to be basically Diker's escape plan, right? Which involves Colt being there to pick everybody up. When they're out in the desert, basically their first taste of freedom, Salwark and all of his like Malazan troops roll up, and he essentially just like lets them go, right? Felison has this like traumatic Stockholm syndrome effect going on and sends Bowden in to get Benneth, which he's not ultimately able to do. And so they set off on this like heinous journey, first through the lakes and then into the desert. And she is super bitter, super traumatized. She's like nursing this hate for Tavor, definitely. She's also kind of super bitter at Heboric and Bowden, too. And she's just angry at the world, and they're the ones she can take it out on. The other thing that happens like pretty early on in their escape is that they get attacked by those like gnarly swarm of bloodflies, right? And so one of the things that was always like Felison's thing was that she was like a very attractive person, and she had started to get less so just because of the like abuse and stuff that she was doing. at the Skull Cup and just the drugs and the boozing and the laying around and all that stuff. But then she gets like attacked by these blood flies. We see Fenner step up to basically protect Hiboric, really, and shows that there's some weird dynamic going on, even though he's excommunicated and all that. There's still obviously might be a little bit less than two-sided, or I don't know. But then she loses like all of the beauty that she had, right? Because she just gets absolutely disfigured and completely maimed by this major bloodfly attack, and actually almost even dies. Then we go over to Diker and Culp, who are essentially trying to commence said rescue plan to go and pick up Hiboric and whoever else he ends up being with. We see that they've made it, a little bit outside of Hisar, where Coltain's army was encamped, and they're in like a little kind of coastal harbor town called Sialk. I know. This is the first time, actually, that we get to meet Stormy and Gessler, who are two of my favorite characters from the whole series. And I'll probably say that every time we see new characters, but this is really like one of the best like friendships, dynamic duos, and just have like a 6-story arc too, which I won't spoil for you other than to say it's the bomb. And they're actually with the Boar Company, and which was this like kind of cult within the army that Lysine ultimately outlawed and disbanded and all of that stuff. And so now they're just kind of harbor marine guards essentially in this small coastal town, but they're still essentially loyal to Fenner. And so it's kind of like this fated meeting where Diker's trying to effect this rescue plan to get this excommunicated priest of Fenner, and he runs into these people who are still like dedicated to Fenner in this coastal guard unit that just happens to be right where he's trying to commandeer a sea vessel to go pick up Hiboric. And they don't say for sure, but it seems like they're there right at the same time that everything was happening with Benneth and Felisin back in Skull Cup, because we essentially see the Whirlwind Rebellion go nuts there too, and all of the Seven Cities natives basically rise up against the Marines and Culp and Diker, and they have to basically hightail it out of there because there is some bloodlust, let's just say, for any of the Malazan loyalists. And it's a pretty heinous like escape that they have to make, right? Because there's some kind of like Seven Cities high mage there just like totally outmatching Culp, and they have to really fight for their lives and try and like fly under the radar. Luckily, like Stormy and Gessler had a ship that was ready to go and all provisioned and stuff, because they had been kind of smelling a rebellion brewing for a long time and wanted to be ready to hightail it out of there. And so they all kind of retreat back to that. Diker decides there's not much he can do to contribute, and so he decides to go back to the 7th so that he can hook back up with Coltaine. And so Stormy, Gessler, Truth, and Culp take off and try and just kind of stay under the radar of that high mage so they can make it out to the Odotarl beach to pick up Hiboric. Meanwhile, Diker heads back across Seven Cities towards the Hisar area to see if he can hook up with Coltaine. As he's riding, he sees that basically Hisar is in flames, and he comes across people along the way who tell him that the Whirlwind Rebellion has been kicked off, and we know that from when Shake opened the book last time and Lostara Hill charged out and blasted her in the head, but that was really the beginning of the rebellion. And so he makes it back to the 7th, or the Imperial compound essentially back in Hisar, and it's been attacked, but what he finds is that they were actually ready for the attack, and they were no easy meat. Even though they were sleeping, they like woke up and were able to defend, and like vast majority of the deaths were the Seven Cities natives. The other thing that they tried to do was like to not just ambush the compound, but simultaneously also ambush the Malazan citizens, just like the loyal Malazan nobles or whatever. And the Wickans were able to kind of like repel that first attack, wheel out, and just do total obliteration to this Seven Cities group that had tried to attack all of the Malazan civilians. Like a so pretty gnarly. And then they basically took this whole city's worth of thousands and thousands of Malazan refugees and start to roll out back towards Aaron, essentially, because they know that the rebellion has started. And so we see Diker like interacting and still pretending to be the Dosi and talking to people and finding out like all of this intelligence, how they expect to crush them. And even though they've suffered this kind of initial defeat, they essentially have Coltaine right where they want him, because they have these two kind of native tribal warriors coming down on them from the sides, and then Camus Relo, who we get to meet for the first time in this book, is going to come up with the formal kind of army of the Apocalypse, Shake's army, to crush them from the rear. So they're just going to have this whole pincher move from the sides, and then he's going to come up and just kind of crush them. And so Diker sets out to try and link back up with them so that he can find out what happens, document it. I don't think he's thinking about fighting, but he definitely is working his way back towards Coltaine. We also get a little taste of Mappo and Icarium, again, snooping around in the basement looking for Iskar broom. They come across the boat, which is obviously servant's boat, but they're wondering, how does a boat that's not of Seven Cities origin show up in the middle of the desert down in the basement of this temple dedicated to Shadow. It goes back to this kind of life for life stuff, life given for life taken. It's kind of weird. You're wondering, like, why are we looking at this boat and wasting time on this kind of stuff? The other thing is we see Mappo and Icarium kind of speculating on Shake, right? And how could she have died unless her renewal was actually like a rebirth, a reincarnation, and she had to die to basically like ascend into this bigger power. So there's just still a lot of speculation about what's going on with Shake still. And basically, Puss does this big old reading and sends him out on this quest and says that he has foreseen Shake's death and that they need to be there for it, and it's time for them to essentially go. And Shadow Throne is like kind of coaxing them all towards moving towards this convergence. And of course, Mappo's his normal fretful self that he doesn't want to be part of anything that might stir some memories for Icarium there. We see Fiddler, Absalar, and Crocus still mobbing through the desert with a big old tail of Grawl on him. They catch up to him right as the apocalypse or the whirlwind is bearing down on him, and he just busts out a cusser and straight up lights up the entire platoon of Grawl. Horses, dudes, everything. Pretty gnarly. And we also wind it up with Callum working his way through the desert with this Aptorian. They get attacked by a pack of these divers wolves, and both have to scrap together to survive, essentially. Callum breaks one of the two twin long knives that he's always used, and he talks about how those have always been with him, and it's kind of like a symbol of his twin competing loyalties and this whole drama that's happened with him and Fiddler, and he wonders which side of his twin loyalties got broken off. And so they don't necessarily become friends, but they do persevere against these divers wolves, and are ultimately kind of, if not friends, are starting to develop this little bond going. So it's Callum and this Aptorian demon that are on the cusp of starting their own little sitcom now. All right, so that's the kind of wrap up of the chapter. If you haven't read the rest of the 10 books, why don't you go ahead and jump out now, because there's like a ton of crazy stuff. I can't even cover it all, but I'll just pick out a couple to get the conversation going down below. Let's start off with the rescue mission, right? Because it's interesting that Pella was obviously like the inside contact on the Diker side for the Heboric rescue mission, but it seems like Salwark was somehow in cahoots with Bowden and Tavor and was like maybe a Talon loyalist or something like that, which is why he let Felison go and started to like crack down on Benneth, which caused that whole beating and rift and all of that with Felison. So yeah, that seems like it's going back a long way, and I just never really understood why Salwark, but the more I think about it, it's like he was obviously Bowden's dude or some kind of a Tavor kind of crony loyalist up there that she had planted, or maybe that's why she had Felison sent to the Odotarl mines in the first place, is that it would be kind of inconspicuous and off the radar, and also she had people that she could manipulate there. The other big thing is all the stuff going on with Iskar Pust, right? Because it seems like he really wanted Felison to be delivered into the desert for Sheikh, or maybe he doesn't want it, but he just knows it's coming down, because he does that whole big reading, and it seems pretty much definitive that it's all about Felison, right? Because he sees like High House Life, Triss, and that kind of goes along with reincarnation. He sees the Soldier of High House Light, which I think could be Lorik. We've got the Spinner of Death, which may be Bowden. And then we've also got the Soldier of Life, which could be Fiddler, potentially. So all of those pieces are coming together in that one place. He sees like Oppen and the push, not the pull, right? So bad luck, and that definitely can be describing Felison's experience for sure. So is this just all part of like a grand strategy where or is he just seeing this happen and ultimately knows like Sheikh's gotta have this kind of first round under her belt and the seventh has to go, and they have to kind of chase the Empire out to be able to get to a position where Tavor can come in and form the Bonehunters and do everything else that happens through the rest of the 10 books? Or is it just kind of happenstance and he's kind of reacting to events as they're unfolding? Curious to know. Let me know down below what you think about all that. I mean, is that why like the Aptorian came and saved Diker and Culp and Bolt and Sormo Enath, because he kind of feels bad, like, yeah, look, we gotta have the Empire lose this one to be able to bring Tavor and form the 14, or get the Bonehunters formed, and make that push into Lether and pursue the ultimate goal with Kamenzad, but feels bad because Coltain's a dude and they respect him and want to help him kind of actually survive the Exodus and make it out. Was Shadow Throne the one like manipulating events the whole time to get Callum to take the book out there, to get Lostara Yil to be there when Medbra did the double cross to be able to take Sheikh down so Felison could jump in? And just makes you wonder how deep that long game goes, and how much again is like premeditated versus just kind of being very fluid and reacting on the fly. So yeah, just a ton of really awesome stuff. You see Stormy and Gessler. I can't wait to get into the next couple chapters where they go into that shard realm and start their journey towards Ascendancy, and we see the Talon Iamas and also just the Salanda and Benata Senegar and all of this stuff that, like, as a first time reader, a lot of this stuff doesn't pop back up for like another 4 or 5 books. So just coming back and seeing it all again and seeing all these nuggets, it's like the Karsa thing and everything else. So really good stuff, having a lot of fun. We'll go ahead and leave it there. Look forward to all the comments. I'm out camping for the next couple days, but I'll be back online soon. We also have a really cool giveaway coming up, so stay tuned for that. We've got the bracket ending in about a week and a half, and that's when I'll do the second round, announce all the seeds, announce the giveaway. We'll have a giveaway for newbies who haven't read the books, and also in parallel a second giveaway for the veterans who've already read the books, and we'll just do some merch and stuff like that. So should be a lot of fun. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Come over to the Discord. It's a lot of fun. I have the Facebook and the Reddit too, but the Discord seems to be the one that's really alive. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. And until next time, happy reading.